We are looking forward to our presentation tonight from Camoin and Associates. I think we all kind of know what we're doing here. We're here to listen to a presentation on Mariner's Way from Camoin, and there's been a group of us who have been working very closely with Camoin over the last year, or it seems like a year anyway. Chris, Jennifer, Bruce Carlson, Matt Pugliese, myself to some extent. Am I missing anybody there? I think it was a smaller group. You know, this is not new. I just want to be very clear on that. This is something that we started 12 years ago. When I first came into office, it was one of the first projects we started with a group of volunteers, not a paid consultant, because without saying anything, without disparaging what we're calling Mariner's Way, it feels like it's underutilized, maybe underperforming, and it is a gateway to our town. So we'd like to think that we can make it better. We can make it better for our residents. We can make it better for the businesses that currently exist. And we can, by doing that, maybe improve the tax base out there. But that is not the primary goal. The primary goal is to make it great for our citizens, our businesses, and those who visit our town. Everything out there is privately owned. We are well aware of that. This is not an instance where the town is asking your support for a project that we might do on government land. That's not what we're doing. But we're here to listen to some ideas, both from you, from Camoin, as to how we perhaps could do better, and what we learn here, we might be able to transfer to other areas of town that we feel might need a little boost. There's a lot of opportunity out there right now, both at the federal and state level, potentially for money. There's opportunity, and we wanted to seize it. And I just want to thank you all for being here. We're going to jump right into the presentation, so I probably already talked too long. Chris, Jennifer, or Bruce, do you want anything to add? Anything you want to say? If Matt Pugliese is on, I don't see him on. I was going to ask him to be a panelist. All right. So with that, we'll turn it over to Alex Trammer and Jim Dancis.
All right. Well, I will get my screen up here so you guys can all see the presentation. Can I just get a head nod or thumbs up? Everyone can hear me okay?
Yep, you're up.
Okay. All right. Folks in the room, you know, feel free to jump in here and let me know if there's any questions or comments in the room. So for those who I may not have met yet, I'm Alex Trammer with Camoin Associates, and I've got my colleague Jim here as well. And like Carl mentioned, you know, what we our plan tonight, why don't I just go to the next slide, is a couple things. So we do want to give, you know, a brief overview of sort of how we got here, like to determine, you know, just the work that has gone into this. It's already been mentioned that, you know, along with this project, this is an ongoing, continuing effort. And I think, you know, the focus and one of the primary objectives of this initiative was to really move forward with some of the tasks and initiatives that have been discussed before, and maybe bring a renewed sense of life to some of the initiatives that have been talked about before. Maybe some were a good fit, maybe some, you know, might need to be revised and thought about a little bit differently now. A lot has changed, you know, even in the last 3 years in terms of market opportunity. So really important to think about what is most relevant and current to Mariner's Way today. Can I just get a show of hands in the room? Who has been involved along the way thus far, or maybe who is brand new to this effort? Is there anyone that has not been involved to date?
Couple people. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Just so I know how far into the background to go. So we'll
And there are people online too, so there could be a few online also.
gotcha. I see 3 folks there. Okay. So we'll set some context, how we got here. Then we will talk about the 10 initiatives that are really the core of this plan. We've set out with 10 ambitious but realistic initiatives, I would say, that are going to be our focus for this plan. And we'll talk about the implementation moving forward, what that looks like, and ultimately what the call to action is. From this meeting, we want to leave with a clear sense of what next steps are, who is doing what. This is things are not going to change tomorrow necessarily, but we are setting a plan in place to be able to see some progress and investment and success in the future. So that is where we are headed. Please, again, along the way, online, in person, stop me. All right, so just setting the context again for timeline, beginning around the end of last summer, we've really taken a comprehensive approach to this work for Mariner's Way. So we take a two-pronged approach, I'd say. So our research, our data analysis, we do a comprehensive real estate market scan to understand what the potential is for this particular corridor in Old Saybrook. So these are customized, very particular market opportunities for this area. So based on the assets that exist, based on work that's already been done, we know that there's a very particular set of items that have opportunities along Mariner's Way. So we consider things like demographics in the area, looking at trends in commercial office space, light industrial, residential, retail, and then the hospitality and tourism market. So we really take, again, a broad scan across multiple markets to understand what the opportunities could be on Mariner's Way. With those findings, we were able to set about 4 to 5 target uses for the corridor. So these target uses might not quite have a particular parcel or home yet on the corridor. However, they're land uses that show opportunity to grow in this area now and in the future as well. So that's important. We're setting the vision, we're setting the establishing where the opportunity is, so that maybe there's not an opportunity that is in front of us today, but in the next 6 months, year, 2 years, we've got a vision and a set of uses established that are desired in this area. And that's important for everyone to be moving forward on the same page with those uses. Lastly, we did look at funding sources that would be able to contribute to potential investment based on current market conditions. Projects are hard to get across the finish line, and so it really typically today takes a set of quite creative funding sources, a creative funding stack to move projects along. And so we are cognizant that there's going to have to be collaboration between the public, private, and nonprofit sector to move successful projects forward. So we've got our research analysis on one side, we've got our engagement on the other side. Over the course of the last 7-8 months or so, working with this group internally at the town, working with the community, business community, as well as property owners on the corridor, stakeholder interviews. So we've really got site visits as well. And so we've really got a comprehensive view of what the potential is for Mariner's Way, and really have a well-rounded idea of how to use that information moving forward. I will say that the plan, right, we've got our 10 initiatives, which we'll get to, but the plan is a great resource to use for data on any of the uses that I had mentioned in the market analysis. That is going to be the latest, market information that I would encourage the town and any stakeholders to use moving forward, because it is really quite useful in establishing what the market demand is in the region. All right, moving on to, that was the process. That's how we got here. I would like to highlight the objectives of this work before we get into the how, which is the actual initiatives themselves. At the end of the day, I would say these 7 items, are what we are aiming to do. And this came from all of the background we collected, the data, the engagement, the market opportunities. These are the 7 objectives that it really came down to in terms of what we're trying to do with this effort. So I won't go through each one of them word by word, but right, we're looking to enhance the quality of place, the feel and environment of this district, right? How does it feel to enter the space? Do you know that you're in a very particular corridor? Is there coordinated signage? Is it walkable? Is it safe? Is it well lit? All of those little items in the environment that really make it a quality place to be. So I think that's certainly one major objective. I wouldn't say that these are necessarily listed in any order. They're all very important to the overall success of the corridor. I'd say certainly that maintaining the support and integrating the existing businesses into any investment or development in the corridor is certainly going to be important. Right, we want to celebrate and support our existing business community, recognize the work that they have done, and really lift them up and make sure that they're able to succeed as well. Housing was a large part of the conversation, I would say, in terms of opportunity. At Commodity Associates, we take a very broad, holistic approach to economic development, and that housing component just is inextricably linked to economic development today. And so when we think about, again, a quality place that businesses want to be, that workers want to be, that housing component is so important. So we're looking to infuse new and diverse housing types into development opportunity. We're looking at adding destination appeal to the district. And so, when we say destination, we mean that there are anchors or elements that are a specific draw to that corridor. So that could be a particular restaurant, particular entertainment, really any particular use that defines that district, and it really sets it apart from other areas. Moving on to the next one, when we look at the opportunity for new businesses, maybe growing from within or attracting businesses in, certainly maritime related was sort of the original focus, and I think continues to be a good fit for the corridor, in addition to other categories of businesses as well. The last 2 there, again, looking at market opportunities in the health, fitness, and wellness space. All of those elements go into again, creating that place that people want to be and spend time in and spend money in. And then lastly, looking at the district's connectivity and walkability while maintaining transportation needs of businesses. So again, the ease of use of getting in and out of that corridor, whether, depending on what form that is, all of these elements are really going to create that overall environment for successful business opportunities. So that is what we set out to do with this. The plan is set out to achieve these objectives. And again, these are long-term, sort of mid to long-term goals. Certainly not something that will happen overnight, but I think with this plan and vision that is put in place, there's an ability to see the path forward. So what we've got here is our 10 initiatives. We will go through tonight at a rather high level. I will say that the full report we're anticipating being finalized and out the first week of May. And so the report is going to have all of these initiatives in quite a bit of detail. We've got these 10 initiatives and there are actions underneath each of those to enable them to move forward. So there's plenty of detail in terms of, how do we actually make these happen over time? For the purposes of tonight, we will, talk through these at a rather high level, certainly open up things to questions and comments and feedback. And we'll go from there. I think on the first one, Jim, you are going to jump in here and we'll just start at the top. Oh, the one thing I do want to add in though is while these are laid out 1 to 10, they are not necessarily anticipated to happen sequentially. There may be opportunities to, work on number 8, advancing a catalytic mixed use project before number 4, or whatever it might be. So while they're laid out in a certain path here, we recognize that as opportunities come up, there's going to be likely a need to shift or grow or really focus on areas where there's opportunity. So I would not get too hung up on the ordering specifically of these because we do recognize that things are going to shift, leadership is going to shift, and we really want to be able to take advantage of any one of these as opportunity arises. And a big part of how that happens is going to be with number 1 here with the redevelopment agency. So Jim, I think I'd like to turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about that one.
Yep. And thanks for having us here tonight. I'm Jim Demesis. So on the redevelopment agency, and this is just one example of what Alex was saying. Later on in this presentation, we do have like a phasing sort of short-term, medium-term, longer-term, and you can see there that there's some short-term things in pretty much every one of the categories here. So that's what she means by non-sequential. One of the ones though that early on is in order to give doing this kind of work and meeting those objectives is very difficult, hence why you've put so much effort into it. You've been working on it for a long time. If it was simple and easily addressable in the market, you wouldn't even have to go through this effort. So like Alex says, that it requires really a public focus and public-private partnerships working with landowners and businesses. So one way that works, and again, like Alex says, when you get the report, there's like several pages of detailed explanation about the actions and the steps and best practices, but is the creation of a redevelopment agency. This is something that's done in other communities. It could be right-sized and organized in a way that fits with Old Saybrook. And it basically allows you to have an ongoing focus. It's a new public, quasi-public entity that allows you to do certain things that include working in terms of grant funding. It allows you to specifically work with property owners in the district to get projects done. It allows you to assemble properties so that they can be developed should they be available, and more. So when I say more, without a development agency, it's not like the work can't get done. It makes it a lot easier and maintains a focus if you want to make sure that this district gets addressed and gets actions in and get implemented over the long term. And a couple of examples of that that I just want to give is I already mentioned the grant funding, the assembling property, but you could take on, subject to revenues coming in, things like special improvement projects related to facade improvements and pedestrian ways and those kinds of things. You could specifically market those opportunities. You can have discussions specifically with property owners and developers. And it's not that this is not private and secret from the public, but because it's a quasi agency, They can do some things that the town doesn't, but they still have to meet the town's objectives. If there's any kind of town funding or town land use laws, they still have to go and meet the requirements of the community and have direct representation and reporting to the town as well. So I just want to make it clear that it can be done in a way that allows it to be consistent with and in alignment with town policy. It doesn't go around laws. It just, particularly around the funding side, allows you to apply for certain grants and get certain private public funding opportunities in place. Some examples, just that will be, there's more cases of it that are in the actual report. Are East Haddam, Connecticut is working with a redevelopment agency, and they're doing a village development. They've been working on it for a couple of years in planning. They're doing things like accepting proposals from submitting RFQs for developers for concepts of redevelopment. And this is the area on the Connecticut River that is right in what's known as the village of East Haddam, where the Goodspeed Opera House is, and where the bridge, comes into East Haddam. Norwalk, Connecticut is another example, and we just highlight those two in the report because they've been able to, in Norwalk, they've been able to focus on a specific area, and they've been able to access some funding from the state specifically for infrastructure improvements. Things like for acquiring property, brownfield remediation, site development, and planning. And then finally, some of the other activities that could be done by the redevelopment agency, and again, reporting to the town, being responsive to the town, would work on specifically. The first step would essentially be establish a framework for it, and we provide some of that framework in the report. And then you got to have an ordinance that establishes it. You would then want to take the plan that we have here today, and you would adopt that plan as being what the primary mission is of the redevelopment agency. And then ultimately, it's a way to focus on one of the harder things in this entire plan, which is coming up with a catalytic project. And, and in the meantime, working with businesses. So let me stop there on that one and turn it over to Alex for the next one.
Thanks, Jim. All right, I will go through 2, 3, and 4 here. So number 2, formalizing district stakeholder involvement in revitalization. This was certainly underway throughout the planning of this, and I think the thought is to continue and grow the participation from property owners and businesses along the corridor. This is really intended to be a two-way street in that, right, there's communication between, the community, the business community and property owners on the corridor and the town, and vice versa. We would encourage the group on the corridor to really utilize and take forward this plan and these initiatives and look at what they're able to leverage and work on and support from their end. Again, there's certainly necessary support from the town and other private, public, and nonprofit stakeholders, but really sort of solidifying and working in partnership and collaboration across the private and public sector is going to help to advance some of these initiatives forward. There are many ways to do this on a spectrum of informal to formal. We would suggest, beginning on the more informal level, building up some support, looking at leadership, and, moving from there into something that might be a little bit more formalized. But to start, it really does not need anything fancy, some space to meet, an agenda in terms of, certain tasks and priorities to move forward. And again, keeping that line of communication open. And it's important to get that direct feedback and meaningful feedback from the businesses and property owners that are currently on that corridor, and making sure that they are part of the conversation moving forward. Moving on to number 3, preparing new Mariners Way marketing and branding materials. We all know that a good brand, a good visual, a good catchy tagline, those are the things, whether it's a particular item or a place or a corridor, those are the things that linger and stick with you. So from this effort where we have set out particular priorities in terms of uses, this is an opportunity to springboard off of that into setting up related marketing and branding materials. So those could be shared stickers or signage between all of the businesses on the corridor, or shared signage, or a whole variety of things. The way that the entire corridor is marketed, the more cohesive that is in the messaging from the town and from existing property owners and businesses that exist there now. That's just really going to help to solidify the overall feel and environment and make it attractive to grow in and to attract into. So some ideas there about how to move that forward in the plan. Number 4, creating a vision master plan to guide zoning updates. So this builds on the work that we did with the zoning commission maybe a couple months ago now, and really understanding that in order to encourage and incentivize types of businesses or types of uses that we want on this corridor that match the market opportunity, we've got to make sure that the land use is appropriate for those uses. At the zoning commission meeting, we were in a good spot, really understanding that a lot of the uses that are desired are allowable there. However, the effort that was undertaken for this plan, right, we've got our overarching market uses and types of businesses that we might want in the corridor. However, in order to find those particular parcels and areas on a site-by-site basis, that's what a vision master plan will do. So it's going to take this plan, bring it down a level of granularity, and really set the stage for a business or investor to really see where that opportunity is situated on the corridor. All right, Jim, I think I'll ask you to take on number 5 here.
Yeah, I'll hit some of the highlights of the resources and incentives for business and new development. So these are things like providing funding sources. There could be essentially, I don't want to get too down in the weeds, but I'll put it into 2 buckets. If there's a catalytic project or an important project, there are incentives that you can help businesses with or the developer with to do that expansion. A lot of times projects can be in the private sector by a developer. They might be financially feasible in the long term, but they need some short-term assistance to get to that point. And that's not uncommon in New England or the Northeast and in Connecticut with corridor development, downtown and district development. So as long as you're trying to put criteria in there to meet objectives, and then there's generally a few ways to provide that kind of support. It could be direct assistance, and I'll talk about a couple of those programs to sort of impact the bottom line of financial feasibility for a business or a developer. It could be zoning and density assistance in terms of what they're able to do on the lot so that they can make the project more feasible. And then finally, it could be things that are supporting the district as a whole, but also benefiting a particular development, like sidewalks and other infrastructure, essentially, and road improvements and those kinds of things. So there's a whole, in the appendix of the report, there's going to be a whole resource of those kinds of specific funding. But I just want to hit on a couple. You already have a tax increment financing district, and that as property gets improved and from new development, a portion of that funding from the new development, not the existing base of taxes, but the new development can go partially into a fund, and that could be used to support further development on a property or within the district for the benefit of the district. The good news is, and normally if we were working in a community that didn't have a TIF, we would be suggesting developing a TIF. But you already do have one, so you have the framework to make that happen, which is a very big deal. It shows that to the town, but also the private sector, that you're serious about trying to do development in this district in the area. The couple others I just want to hit on. There are, because of the based on the state program, but like under state law, there's the ability for cannabis tax revenues to go back to 3% tax to the town of Old Saybrook on gross receipts, and those monies can be used for further economic development, and revitalization programs are eligible uses of those funds. Ongoing, and pretty much at any given time, the Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development, DECD, has grant programs. When you have a district plan and you formalize that plan like you're doing here tonight and will be continuing to do, you then provide the basis for submitting funding applications. And that work's a work in progress already, but should be continued. And then finally, at certain times, some of this stuff might be appropriate to fund through further town budget appropriations that enhance some of those other sources as well. So Alex, back to you.
All right, we will pause after number 10 here and make sure that we pause for clarification and any questions. But we'll go through this next row first. So I will do 6, 7, and 8 here. So housing was a large part of the conversation, like I previously mentioned, and from what we see in the market and opportunities, several different categories of housing really does have a tremendous opportunity to revitalize the district. New residents in this area can play the role of supporting existing businesses and new businesses. So we've laid out a couple different housing types, from multifamily to 55 plus. It's got to be situated in the appropriate location, of course, to be able to make sense, but to be able to find that location, support that housing, perhaps in a mixed use capacity as well. So where there might be another use on the ground floor, maybe retail or commercial housing above it. Those types of developments certainly have the opportunity to be a fit in this corridor and help drive economic activity. Number 7, redesigning the streetscape of the corridor. This gets to quite a few of those elements that I mentioned earlier in terms of setting the stage for the environment for the area. So when we talk about streetscape, we talk about everything from sidewalks to signage, to wayfinding, to pedestrian friendliness, to crosswalks, all of those elements that go into the design of a street that make it easy for people to get in and out of, whether it's as a pedestrian or as a car. We talked about this area as a gateway into the community, and there really are some sort of specialized opportunities for this type of gateway, in that it really sets the stage and the tone for the business community. And so moving items like that along, this can happen incrementally, right, in certain components, is really going to start to make a difference in the overall feel of the corridor. Number 8 sort of combines a couple of the topics that we've been talking about, advancing a catalytic mixed use project. Sometimes, right, in this case, when we've got a commercial corridor that could use an infusion of new investment, or, just a renewed purpose, one or two sort of destination or anchor projects really can help advance that effort. And so talking about a mixed use project, again, maybe it's got multiple uses, maybe it's active at certain parts of the day, certain parts of the evening, really looking at driving up activity in the corridor in the appropriate locations. These types of projects, again, are typically fueled by a public-private partnership, maybe even nonprofit, depending on the development community. But there's certainly opportunity to lay the groundwork for this type of project and really make it a transformative opportunity to lead to other success. That'll take us to 9 and 10, some infrastructure related, and then we'll pause there.
Yeah, and thanks for being patient. We just feel it's better to get through these and then we'll stop after these two. And these are a little bit more narrow in terms of like what they are, but the last two are there's constraints on wastewater in the district, and that has it limits the ability to do economic development, to do development projects. So, however, with newer technologies and newer designs, there are opportunities for like district-wide wastewater systems and even like multiple property wastewater systems that may or may not be feasible. But that's where the recommendation comes in. It's beyond our scope to be able to do that. It requires a certain kind of expertise, but using some of the funds that we've talked about earlier, for planning, including like your TIF funds, we're suggesting that you actually do that feasibility study to find out whether or not a localized district wastewater treatment system is possible, and what it's going to take, what it would cost, how much development could it support, and what would it take for that development to pay for it, how much of it can be paid for out of TIF. But a lot of it comes down to the engineering and understanding the cost associated with the actual development and use of that wastewater treatment. The last one is the consider a town-wide blighted commercial program. And just to be real simple, there are at times you get into situations where properties are not being utilized, they're not being invested in, and they become a blight. And by having a blight ordinance, it allows you have a blight ordinance, but that pertains, but to be able to further enact that blight ordinance and implement it, if you take steps, it's going to allow you to take action over time if there's not investments in properties occurring. It's not something that should be taken lightly. It is something that does require more consideration by the town as a whole. So it's truly, I don't want to say it's initiative 10, but it shouldn't be your first initiative. But it should be something that you consider doing longer term and consider like what can be done. And again, it becomes a tool to help encourage development of properties in the district. There's examples that we have in the report that include Darien, Connecticut, Ridgefield, Connecticut, and Brantford, Connecticut, who use this kind of tool. And so they provide some guidance for how it can be done. And then we give the specific public act in Connecticut that enables this to occur. So let me stop there.
All right, I know we did go through a lot, but I do just want to open it up to any clarifications we can offer, anything you'd like to see highlighted before we leave this page, since this really is the core of the plan, or any staff that have participated. If you'd like to add any color to any of these, I'd welcome that as well.
So Jennifer, do you have anything you want to add to the presentation, or Chris?
I'm good, thank you. I mean, I think one of the things that we just wanted to make clear about this next step is that we've spent since September studying everything, and now these steps are meant to be the action part. they're gonna take time, but, we didn't want this plan to just sit on the shelf. We didn't study it all these months so that then we could say, oh, look at all these figures we have. And we really wanted it to be action oriented and implementable, and that's where this part comes in. And we'll get farther in to talk about maybe some of the next steps. We felt that was really important.
Kathy Connolly will unmute you. You had your hand up?
Yep, I do. Carl knows the background here, but from 2008 to 2012, I chaired a bicycle and pedestrian committee in town. And I am disturbed by some of what I'm hearing here, because everything that you're talking about brings about greater traffic in what I call the effect would be pig in a boa constrictor. I don't see how, without serious road changes, you can bring more traffic into that area without worsening conditions overall. I'd like to just add a couple of comments to that based on my experience with the Bike and Pedestrian Committee. You won't be surprised to learn that when we did a public hearing and a survey during that time period, this was 2008 to 2012, that the area that you're talking about turned up as like one of the most difficult in town for walkers and cyclists. So in particular, and this is the one thing that I haven't heard come up yet, in particular, recreational cyclists would bring up the fact that there's a bridge called the Baldwin Bridge that has a bike lane on the northern side of the bridge. And it actually has a whole lot more pedestrian and bicycle traffic than I think anybody acknowledges. And the reason I can say that is because one year our committee participated in the bike ped count weekend. It was 2012 when 4 of us stood out on street corners and counted cyclists and pedestrians. Now, I wasn't the person who stood at the base of the Baldwin Bridge pedestrian trail where it comes into the Ferry Point area. But that person did stand there for 2 hours and count. And she was very surprised at the number of people who were coming onto and off of that bridge. Now, it was a nice September afternoon, so it's not surprising that there would have been some traffic on a day like that. I was over at the corner where Mystic Market is at 154 and Post Road, and I had a couple of hundred, excuse me, I had a couple of hundred cyclists and pedestrians come through the area that I counted over 4 hours. We had people stationed in other parts of town. So here's my point. The area is very tight. It's already at certain times heavily laden with traffic. And I hear about new businesses coming in, and all I can think of is pig and a boa constrictor. And no matter how many nice words we make about trying to improve it for pedestrians, I and other people at that time, those 4 years that we looked at this, we looked at many different possibilities. Some of them are pretty obscure, but they never got any attention at the time. Now, I'm happy to share those with anybody who's interested in looking at them. But the reality is that it's easy to say. I think it's going to be excruciatingly difficult to meet that point on your 10-point plan. And so my belief is that before we make a commitment to adding traffic to that very narrow and rather unattractive corridor, we need to make a really big commitment to improving the pedestrian and bicycle, the non-motorized movement options through that corridor, particularly over to the Baldwin Bridge. The last thing I would like to say is that, in the day when we were doing that, the state had a bicycle and pedestrian office. We were working with RiverCog, and we were all in touch. But I will say that today, that bike and pedestrian office, I believe, is quite a bit larger, better staffed, and I think better funded than it was 12 to 15 years ago when we were attempting to do that work. And I really think that somebody ought to knock on their door and say, hey, you've got this bike and pedestrian trail over the Baldwin Bridge. Can you help us out here? Can you help us to improve the connectivity across the river? I will confess to having one time stood out there in the middle of the night to try to observe if people were walking over it during the night, and they were. People who go from restaurants, they walk over the bridge sometimes because they don't have other transportation in the middle of the night. So it is a heavily used bridge. It's not widely acknowledged. And I really, really hope that you'll start to add it into the conversation. So, you know, I could go on for a while, but I know you have a lot else to talk about. But if anybody wants to resurrect the files from that period of time, I'd be happy to turn them over to someone.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yep.
Thank you. Anybody, Paul, I see you have your hand up. Hold on one second. Why don't we alternate maybe? Anybody in the room have a question or a comment at this point? Certainly you're not foreclosed from doing it later either.
I would like to hear about the.
Well, could you stand up so we can hear you?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'd like to know what other projects they've been involved with. We heard about East Haddam and Norwalk. What other projects have this in this initial revitalization and working on, and what was their success like?
Okay.
Can you provide us a list of other areas and other towns, maybe in Connecticut?
Yeah, and Carl, like, tell me if I can go further on that, but I just be really high level and we can provide more. And this was something the town vetted when they hired us, but we've done a lot of work in Connecticut, and most recently, in terms of successes, it's been housing projects in New London, the creation of TIF districts in Groton, Connecticut, and working on their housing strategy, but also specific housing projects as part of our real estate team. We've done district projects in Hartford, Hamden, New Haven, New Milford. So part of the reason that, and some of the success comes, some are purely planning projects, but frankly, on a lot of them, they're also implementation projects because we work on financing, including TIF. And so they've actually led to development. Bristol, New Britain, I can go on because there's probably been over 75 projects in Connecticut in the last 10 years.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe, were you asking about this group or that redevelopment agency?
Redevelopment agency, and I'm still been coming to the meetings for a long time. I'm still totally unclear where the direction of this whole thing is going in.
I think it was also, Jim, not only a question about Camoin, but also about the tool of a redevelopment agency.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I thought you were asking about us in particular.
Both.
Yeah, so I mean, that's about us, and we can provide more projects if you'd like. On the redevelopment agency, that kind of work, again, in East Haddam, it's in the planning stages. So they're like planning, meaning they have a redevelopment agency, and they're doing they have public property that involves remediation. So they're doing like brownfield remediation studies. But while they're doing that, we're helping them with the financing to work with specific developers who are proposing redevelopment plans. So there's been no actual development yet, but that's what they're in that. They're like probably a year to a year and a half into the redevelopment process, essentially. And that's the one I'll highlight that one. And there's been others. And again, they work best when you have a specific district that you're trying to work on. And then sometimes, like in the case of I was going to say New London, but Bristol, for instance, their redevelopment agency work is around the downtown, but it's a much larger example. So I didn't give that one here because it's a much larger downtown, whereas this is a much smaller district.
In the larger report, there are actually links to several examples around the state, and I found it helpful to go into those because they're each a little bit structured a little bit differently, so you can see how people are tailoring the situation to their communities.
Yeah, and Norwalk, I gave the other one was Norwalk that we use in the report as well.
Paul Connolly will unmute you.
Okay, just real quickly, something that's come up fairly recently that I think would be important for people to realize. I mean, Harbor Management has been working with federal, state, and Amtrak officials as we look to the reconstruction of the railroad bridge. There is a very long Amtrak access point that goes, I think it's more than half a mile out to where the bridge will now be ending. Amtrak has a right of way, I think, over the some land in the area. So they're able to get their construction equipment in and out over the next 7 years, which is the project span. Harbor Management asked Amtrak to give us public access to that point and that strip. And they turned us down originally, but just to throw it out there, there is this relatively lengthy possibility for public access coming from Mariners Way District. And again, I don't know where that would be because it's all private land. And we haven't gotten Amtrak to agree to any of this yet. But once the construction is done, there'll be a fairly sizable swath of land along Ragged Rock Creek out to the point that might somehow fit into this puzzle. So I just Harbor Management wanted to drop that into this conversation so people were aware of it. And that's all I have to say.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. They're gonna continue, but any other thoughts at the moment?
Just
Yeah,
getting very pragmatic. I mean, it's 100,
I just want to make sure everybody can hear you.
not to be too pragmatic, but it's 100% owned land on that street. So if everybody's doing their thing there, how do you move this thing anywhere forward?
Yeah,
I mean,
so there's some vacant land, not vacant land, there's some property that's for sale.
correct, yeah.
There's some properties that don't advertise they're for sale that are for sale. You know, I don't like to focus on one property, but years ago, we received a grant from, I forget what Connecticut agency it was, for about $150,000 to do an environmental assessment of the property, Custom Marine property.
Yeah.
The idea for something like that, just to give you maybe a little bit of an idea how it might work, where we do an assessment, we find out what the pollution on the property is. Then the town could then access state funds for remediation. But we would only do that if they agreed, if there was a deal to sell the property. Because why would we remediate it for a property owner that's done nothing with it for 25 years? So that's just a very small example of how government can be involved in private property without, the idea of taking private property or doing anything like that. So you heard earlier with the redevelopment agency, the potential for cobbling together properties. So there may be several willing sellers, and there is an agency at the state that has significant bonding authority. So we may be able to access some of that money on behalf of a private property owner to help them perhaps put two pieces together to make it one larger piece. So your point is very well taken. I don't mean to dismiss it. And that's one thing I said right at the top of the show.
Correct, yes.
It's private property out there. And, we're going to be very respectful of private property rights. However, there are more than a few properties out there for sale. We all know that. Paul,
Does the town?
I'm sorry, does that
Yeah,
reasonably address what you're?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Does the town have any control over any of the land, like an easement to put in sidewalks or landscape?
So that's a state road, but the state works with you on a state road. So we've done a lot of sidewalk work on state roads. So we just have to get an encroachment permit from the state and we get that.
So we could do that now.
In fact, I just received an encroachment permit today because we intend on doing some of the property, some of the parking stalls on Main Street have this, like right. So we want to redo a lot of the parking stalls on Main Street.
Yeah.
We have to get an encroachment permit because it's a state road,
Yeah.
but we have to do the work.
Okay.
So the state is very cooperative in these items. Not only that, with regard, and you may know this, Chris Costa may know this, that is an exceptionally wide right of way out there. I remember conversations from 10 years ago. It's a huge right of way. I'm not saying we're gonna do this. Back in the day, there was talk of perhaps slimming the road down so that you could in fact get a pedestrian or a bike path in the right of way. Now Kathy may not like that idea because she talks about squeezing the road is not probably ideal if there's a lot of traffic. But I think there are opportunities within the state right of way, and we've already been in touch with DOT to just tell them that we may be coming forth with some plans. Just some ideas to see if they would entertain them.
Well, it might sort of start the ball rolling in terms of setting a new tone, in terms of the area. That was one particular thought.
Yeah. Okay, Alex and Jim, why don't you continue on?
There's
Yeah,
a hand.
unless you want, what,
There's a
I'm sorry.
hand on the panel.
If you want online.
Aaron.
Oh, Aaron, I did.
I'll make it really quick, Carl. So this may have been covered already. I'm just tuning into these meetings now, and I would imagine you handle everything responsibly. You've already covered this, but the towns mentioned tonight by the gentleman, Hamden, New London, Norwalk, are not comparable to Old Saybrook. I'm sure you agree with that. Do we have an estimate of the increase of population, and will it be with Old Saybrook and the small town in mind? That's my first part. The second part is if there is a rapid increase in population, I know my husband's on the fire department, making the truck, getting out of this side of town to get over there is quite difficult. Will you factor in risk of life? Would there possibly be another fire department on this side of town? You don't have to answer it tonight. I'm just curious if this is all being factored into all of the plans.
Yeah, I think, first of all, the state has our population declining over the next 10 years. If it wasn't for the apartments on North Main Street, we probably would be in decline, but those apartments actually gave us a boost of about 250 people. I think to say that we increase Old Saybrook's population by 500 would be a stretch. I mean, in our lifetime, that's a lot of people, a lot of apartments. So I do not think that we're at risk of doubling the size or even adding 20% or 10% for that matter of the population to Old Saybrook just in Mariners Way. And don't forget, not everything will be housing. That's number one. Aaron, you're correct that some of the projects mentioned were New London, Waterbury or Hartford. And while we are not those, you've also heard Haddam and you've heard New Milford. And there are other towns that probably feel and look a little bit more like Old Saybrook in terms of not being a city, but being more of a town. And I think Alex and Jim could probably give us some examples of that, whether it's tonight or another night.
Okay, thanks, Carl. I was just throwing that out there, so thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question, Aaron. I actually thought the same thing. I'm like, while Jim was saying New Haven and Hartford, I'm like, oh, that's probably not exactly what folks want to hear in Old Saybrook. You've heard, that being said, and I don't want anyone in the room to get the wrong impression of what I mean by that. We do want more diversity in our housing stock. This may be a good opportunity to do that. So, I think North Main Street is a great example of diversifying our housing stock with great success. And there were a lot of people who were very doubtful about that. And I think we can continue that trend and I think that's one of the target areas where we might try to do that. But we're not building housing. It's got to be a private developer coming in. So, and that would go through zoning and it would go through architectural review board. And I think we've been very successful with our housing stock in terms of newer developments that have gone through zoning. So I'm blabbling on right now, so I'll stop.
Yeah, and Carl, if I could, this is Jim, just to add to that, I just want to clarify too, Aaron, your point's really well taken. When I was given some of those examples too, I was trying to explain some of the tools that are out there, but not how they would be implemented in Old Saybrook. And then secondly, I thought one of the questions was related to what was Camoins' experience in Connecticut, and I was addressing that. I just want to clarify, Carl, if I can, because some of the communities where these tools were, the smaller communities would be as small as Higganum and Canton, Windsor Locks, and others in Connecticut. East Haddam was already mentioned, and frankly, and I know Old Saybrook is unique, and the smaller New England towns are also unique. And you may not think it, but like you're also a lot like other New England villages and small towns, including coastal, where I know I live in Maine, which is not Connecticut, but we have very small communities in Maine that are doing village development. And these are some of the same tools that are used there in the smaller communities of Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island. But I just want to stress that we also understand the uniqueness of Connecticut in terms of the state laws and regulations, and we fully understand what's going on in your corridor, particularly that exists between New Haven and Rhode Island. So in all cases, I don't want this to get thrown off by, hey, these are tools that other places use that are not like us. In all cases, the reason we would recommend a redevelopment agency and a plan like this is that you design it for what's right for Old Saybrook.
Okay, why don't we move on, Jim and Alex?
All right. Well, with that, we sort of already talked a little bit about, right, the how and how this moves forward with implementation. The way that we lay this out is a phased approach. And so between a short-term, midterm, and long-term range, essentially in the plan, what you will see, this is just a snapshot from a few of the first initiatives, the first 3 initiatives. There's going to be elements that are applicable in the short and the long term. And so what we've laid out is some proactive ways to sort of advance each of these initiatives. Again, these are not meant to be entirely prescriptive as opportunities arise to advance certain items, right? We would certainly encourage the town and their partners to do that. So these are sort of ideally laid out for how things might happen. But as we all know, development and some of these initiatives may or may not happen in a linear fashion. And so what we really have a way to kickstart things here, and the town and their partners will adapt as things advance. I think maybe, the immediate sort of next steps and activating the plan, where we go from here. I think Jennifer said earlier, when this effort started, right, this was really a renewed planning work that, you know, we really did not want to sit on a shelf, that is intended to be taken and used by the town and their partners. And so what we've laid out here and sort of vetted this initially internally.
I just want to interrupt for a second because are you trying to show the slides at this point?
Oh, are you not seeing any slides?
I don't think they're showing yet. I think share them back.
Oh, well,
Carl, is it just me or is it not showing on your end?
We shut them off for the discussion, so we could see the participants who were raising their hands. Sorry about that, Alex.
oh, no problem. Let me get it back on the screen. Well, I've got some great slides here.
Sorry, I didn't want to just interrupt, but I just
No, thank you for pointing that out. Okay, well, this will all make much more sense then.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yes, so the implementation timeline laid out in this short, mid, and long term for each of the initiatives. We've got a way here to kickstart some of these initiatives, and then as progress advances, right, some of these actions may change or adapt, but this is initially a way to get started on each of those. And then this is the slide that I had just sort of started on in terms of immediate next steps, activating where we go from here. I think it's really an opportunity to sit down with the plan and among different groups to think about how to use it as a resource and prioritize moving forward. And so we've laid out distinct groups here, whether it's staff or any of the land use boards, and then the property owners and businesses on the corridor. This is essentially, right, the call to action that we've done all this work, we've done the plan, we've vetted these concepts, and this is an opportunity to take those concepts, those initiatives, and really get to work in terms of launching, you know, where do we go from here? So we've laid out a couple of high priority actions to advance forward. And, you know, I think the ask of any of the land use boards, particularly tonight, or any property owners or businesses, would really be to think about, you know, in the next month or so, once this is fully released, is to take a look with each of those groups and pick out the items that are, you know, best suited perhaps to be advanced forward. And all of that is going to be a collaborative effort, right? This is not on the backs of any one individual or any one partner. And this is an opportunity to think about moving forward, how we all might collaborate. Staff or any town leadership, any thoughts on sort of operationalizing the plan that we've got and some of these next steps?
That would be you, Chris.
Well, I think you did a pretty good job summarizing. The thought was to, rather than have a plan and read it and put it to the side, is to have a discussion amongst the land use boards and commissions, the Board of Selectmen and other agencies. And then at the staff level, I think our committee, we can kind of keep plugging along and see what feedback comes in from those boards and commissions. And our other discussion was that if someone from the property owners or business owners would help to kind of organize, so we could get feedback from folks who own property and run businesses on Mariners Way.
The other, one other item that's important is the American Rescue Plan ad hoc committee of the Board of Selectmen. So the Board of Selectmen appointed a group of volunteers to figure out how to distribute $3 million. And, you know, it's a fun problem, right? So one of the allocations is $250,000 to try to make some sort of impact on this plan. So we're serious about putting money towards it. Where it goes, what that is, whether it's a project, whether it's planning so that we can get state permission to do something, that all costs money. So there is a serious effort by town administration and by volunteers to put our money where our mouth is on this project. So, big picture, just big picture. I think we can all agree that, and I, again, not to disparage, but we can all agree that it could look better. Let's just say aesthetically, just driving down the street, there could be trees, there could be better facades, there could, maybe it's that. Maybe we start there. Simple. And when you do something like that, people might drive by and say, wow, that's close to the highway, it's attractive. In fact, Jennifer and I met with somebody who really wants to move their business there. And someone like this business could be a catalyst for other businesses coming in. And it's a really cool little business. So actually, it's more than a little business. So we're here because we want your involvement. We don't want you to look at us and say, oh, town government again, they're doing stuff. We don't. We're looking for you to be involved in this. And that's where it says property owners, business on the corner, get involved. We'll work with you. We want to make something happen out there, something good. So I forget where we were. Oh, you had turned it over to staff and us at that point. So
Yeah. All right. Well, I think just sort of to wrap up in terms of, I think, right, some of the initiatives that we looked at are looking at those 10 together, right, it's daunting. Those are big initiatives, big asks. It's hard to think about, right, how those might happen incrementally over time, but we've seen success. This is a long-term vision and plan. And Jim, I know you could talk about a few of these factors for a long time, but if you just maybe want to set up and leave the group with some thoughts on, how to really think about moving this forward with progress for success, and what are those elements that are really needed to make some advancements that we've talked about tonight.
Yeah, and I'll be real brief, Alex, too. These are like, we'll leave these with you. And so they're like what we've learned, but also like what's in the best practices of community development, so that you could go beyond having studies that sit on a shelf to things that actually get done. And there was really good comments tonight. There was one particular comment about, well, how can we make this happen with property owners and they're not ready to sell? And there was an excellent comment, because it's a challenge. But the answer is like, it's commitment over the long term. And sometimes you get overwhelmed in the long term. So what I can just say is this, that have a plan, which you do. So you've already been developing not just this plan, but other related plans, and then stick to it. Like, in other words, that doesn't mean you have to implement everything. It means you take components of it, you take small steps, and by doing small steps, you actually build trust. You start showing people that change is possible, improvements are possible, and you start chipping away. And then if a catalytic project comes along, you're in a better position. And then finally, no, you can't foresee everything. Think about, the obvious example is, hey, what's going to happen to the markets? Well, who can predict a pandemic, for instance, that is going to impact markets? So you just got to be able to respond and adapt. It doesn't mean throw out the whole plan. It means it's a work in progress, overseen by the committee in a redevelopment agency, and you update it on occasion, and you pivot where there's opportunities and where there's new issues to be addressed. And it all gets based on continued communication. Realize that a month from now, a year from now, there's going to be different people in the room, different people in the community per se. And so you got to constantly communicate what's going on so you can continue that trust.
Thanks, Jem. All right, well, that is really what we had. We've sort of already talked about these next steps, highlighting though some of those bullets on the previous slide about, really taking ownership of components of the plan. The timeline is to make the plan fully public the first week of May, based on some final tweaks and edits that we're making now. And then it will be ready for public consumption and ready to launch and really become part of the work that the town and their partners take on.
Good. Can we, take the slide down? No?
Stop the screen share.
Yep. There we go.
All right, Bruce, is there anything you want to add as a member of the group that was shepherding this through a little bit? No?
Good job.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to ask Alex, how can we get access to her slides? Can she email them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to email these slides along, Chris and staff, however you guys typically, if you share slides and things, but I'm happy to make them available.
Thank you.
You can email them too, or you can put them on the website as well.
Then everybody can.
Yeah, great. Okay, yeah, sure. That's Mr. Antonia, right?
Yeah. So you said that the housing project on North Main Street was a big success.
Yeah.
Have you sat in traffic from Mystic Market to get through Main Street? And now if we put more housing, what are we doing with that stretch of road that you can't get through, especially in the summertime? But even, it used to be just the summer, now it's constant traffic through there.
Yeah, you're talking about coming over the railroad bridge into the.
Correct.
Yeah, but that's not because of the housing on North Main Street.
There are 250 units there, so how many more?
There's 187 units,
So
but
how many more cars is that?
we've had traffic studies there and they were more concerned about North Main Street than they were about Route 1. And I think the traffic studies showed like zero impact, not much impact at all in terms of the traffic that the posted
Didn't
main.
change the level of service.
It did not change the level. I'm not disputing that there's traffic coming over that bridge.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's because of the North Main Street apartments. I think the town is busier. I think the town is busier. I mean, you've been here longer than I have. I've been here since 1994. And I know that to be the case, that I was asked the question, what do you think, what do I think has changed in Old Saybrook since I've been here? And I would say it's more of a year-round town. And I think that's one of your comments. There's even more traffic in the winter now than there was. I don't think we're talking about the density of housing. And first of all, I don't want to jump the gun either. There's nothing out there right now. There's no plans, okay? So we are talking about possibly proposing housing if that opportunity came to us, possibly proposing mixed use, which would mean maybe a restaurant or retail on the first floor with some apartments above it, if that opportunity came before us. So what I would say to you, Bob, is why don't you be involved in this with us? And I mean that. And if and when something comes down the pike, you can be on the front line of asking those questions. It's a good question about the traffic, but right now there's nothing to be developed.
Okay. And my other question is the property that I own.
What do you own out there?
1 Ferry Road.
Okay.
So back in the late 80s, early 90s, that property was gonna be put up for sewers. That it was the best property location for sewers. So does that mean with this change that, let's just say that we eventually did go to sewers in Saybrook, that my property would not be available for that?
Sewers are highly unlikely, okay, and that is taking a leap to a completely different conversation.
Well, I say that because they're
No,
talking
no,
about.
they were talking about a district system, not sewers to the river.
Yeah,
You're talking about basically sewers to the river.
right.
I don't know that they were talking about
No,
that.
we weren't. You got it right, Carl. It was like district level, not sewers for on-site type of solutions, but might involve more than one property.
So as soon as we go to the river, that's a different issue.
Okay.
That is deep. A lot of environmental groups would get involved in that, opposed to it. And just so you know, the town still has its other project going, the WWMD, and we are talking about doing something similar, a localized sewer system, but servicing 500 homes, for instance. So this would be similar to that. Okay?
Good.
All right. There'll be more opportunity. And by the way, and I'm looking at everybody who's not staff or voted onto a board or commission, I'm looking at you guys and the folks on here, you're part of this. So we're not dictating to you. We want you to be part of this. There is opportunity out there. There's money at the state level, there's money at the federal level, and there's money at the town level that we put aside for this area of town. So, maybe we could work together. Not everybody's gonna agree on everything, okay? We expect no votes. But I think having intelligent conversation, asking good questions, it's healthy, and we can try to move forward with it. So,
Just a quick thing, Carl. Are
Yeah.
you guys gonna try, in order to move this along, change the zones as far as things go, to try to adapt this to make it work?
are you talking about zoning?
As far as like I district.
I'm gonna turn that over to Chris, that question.
So,
And I'm gonna leave.
So, Camoin, had a nice meeting with the zoning commission to talk about a number of the uses. And one of the things I think that came out of it was that a lot of the uses are allowed, but people are not going and using, taking advantage of the zoning. So we left it that as part of the new development agency that they would come up with, and that was one of the tasks, that was to have some type of a master plan to try to figure out what should go where and what would be the appropriate zone. So I think once the development agency is established and the ideas with your input are brought to the forefront, then the discussion will be going to the zoning commission and getting them on board as well throughout the process to see what's appropriate to zone. But right now, there is no developer, there is no plan,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? There is no, in
Yeah.
this section, so it doesn't make sense to start rezoning things when we don't have that master
I would
plan.
say don't going down the road, if somebody wants to do something there, and it does not fit the zone, and then it would have to be a zone change, correct?
Well, today, if something doesn't meet the zoning, it's a zoning change, so
Yes.
it's, either way, if the development agency decides they wanna change the uses, then it would have to go to the zoning commission with a public hearing to go through and change the uses. So no matter what changes, or if you propose a use on your property that doesn't meet the regulations, you still have to go for the zone change.
I guess what I was saying, do you think the zoning board's gonna be more lenient to move this project ahead?
I mean, I can't speak on behalf of the whole commission, but I think if the zoning commission had a master plan that was reasonable and feasible, that they would listen to the proposed zoning map and text amendments, yes,
But you said
and
lenient.
realistic.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna be more lenient because for any reason. I think so years ago, the Economic Development Commission said, we wanna change the zones out there. I don't know if you remember that. And they went to zoning, and zoning said, cart before the horse. You wanna change the zoning, you don't have any users, you don't have anybody coming in. If you have some people who wanna change the zones, and they wanna tell us what they wanna do there, great, they can do that. And it'll be the same for this. It's not gonna be, it's truly not gonna be any different. I don't think the economic, or I don't think a redevelopment agency, whatever that might look like. Well, if there was going to be a redevelopment agency that said, we want this all to be B4 commercial or something. That is gonna involve that's gonna involve public hearings and zoning, but that's highly unlikely. It's still going to probably be a developer coming in, this is the use I'd like to put here, and going before the zoning commission. And whether that's a variance or, you know.
Well, I mean, I think the thing is, there's no plan that I'm aware of right
Yeah,
now to change the zoning as it is. There are tools, but we could put an overlay zone to say, okay, you know, here's the plan for the area, if someone in it, if it comes in and meets it, which wouldn't affect your current zone. There's different ways to do it, and that's why I think it's critical to have your buy-in as property owners and tenants throughout this process. But I don't think anyone has any intent of trying to zone out your use. Is that what the concern, or?
No, I guess I just didn't know if you had to keep a certain amount of I in town or to make the tax structure work or how that works. So, you know, say somebody wanted to build a hotel on something you know.
Well, I think the boards and commissions, the zoning commission and the planning commission, they're not gonna rezone and remove all the industrial. I mean, I think there has to be that balance. It's just
Well, I guess
doing it carefully, and I mean.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, if this road 40 years from now turns into a commercial area, you're gonna have no I left. I mean,
Well, but some of the I too, if you look at the zoning regulations,
allows in this stuff.
well, how many publishing and printing companies do you see coming here like Donnelly's?
Right.
So I think maybe there needs to be some tweaks to those uses, because I don't even get a newspaper anymore. Some younger folks probably never saw a newspaper ever with the paper boy go to the door. So I think, you know, every once in a while, we need to revisit those uses and say, okay, you know, we know why it was there, we know Donnelly's was there, but is this realistic? So I don't see the commission zoning out all of the industrial zones we need them. Maybe they need to adapt a little to the new environment and the new economic climate, but I don't see them disappearing.
I have what is the current financial relationship of the town with Kim?
Yeah, come on. So we went through an RFP process. There were 5 respondents to that RFP process. The group amongst us that I mentioned earlier chose Camoin. We went to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and town meeting, and we appropriated funds. And they are a paid consultant, just like we would do any other RFP process, whether we're putting in sidewalks or hiring a consultant.
I see, just for this, for one report, for this.
Yeah,
upcoming report?
to help us with this, yes.
Thank you.
That question I can answer. The land use question, not so much. Anyway, all right. It's almost 8:30. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it very much. And thank you, Jim and Alex. And anything else? We're good?
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you all.